Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host for Talk Architecture Podcast, and today's episode is a quick teaser on an upcoming podcast episode, which will feature a conversation that I have with architect Lok Wooi of Wooi Architects. Now, I've known Lok since the early 1990s when he was with Jimmy Lim, and it was on occasion to do with a semester worth of projects for the second and third year of unit Roland President. And in that unit, we have a few other tutors, apart from myself, who went to basically Jimmy Lim's buildings in the Klang Valley and even his own house. And it was focused, because it's a role and precedent unit, it was focused on Jimmy Lim's philosophy. And the student of architecture at the time, I see that there were many interpretations. There were literal usage of what Jimmy Lim's details on timber architecture, and there were people who were trying to find their own interpretation of timber architecture, and the whole goal of maintaining or preserving timber, and the whole idea of the character of timber buildings. And we know that architect Wooi, or I will call here in this episode and also in when I converse with him as Lok Wooi, he actually, after he left Jimmy Lim's office and on his own, he has created award-winning buildings, such as his own home that I have had the privilege to visit in the past. And the language of architecture using timber as the main material resonated in most of his houses. It's his signature that people go for in terms of the sense of the dwelling or house, or sense of pride by his clients to adopt his ideas, or to build his ideas, so to speak. So he's very much an architect who is out there and well known in Malaysia and internationally. And so he will give some ideas on architecture education and architecture practice. And because he was involved, or is still involved, with University Putra Malaysia, especially with architect Wan Sophia on the design thesis studios. And he has, as I know him, in the mid to late 1990s, as I know him because I knew him earlier with Jimmy Lim's office, I invited him to be the part-time lecturer, and he had an appointment there at University of Malaya with the third year students. And it was fun, and I learned from him. And then after which, later on, he also was invited to University of Malaya programs. And he has been invited to numerous other universities, University UITM, or University Technology Mara, and the private universities, and UKM, and so on. So these are all in the Klang Valley area in Malaysia, and also UTM in Johor. So what we have here is that an individual who has an extensive experience involved in a lot of the programs, and his stance, or he's not a full-time academic, obviously, he's a practitioner, and he comes in and give that needed perspective from the industry. So with that in mind, that's what he is coming from when he discussed about architecture education and his opinion about how to move forward with architecture education and the importance of the design thesis here. And yes, I was very interested in this question as well, and it's this conversation that I have with Lok Wooi, the intense conversation regarding architecture education, the way I see it, has started in during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, when we had the movement control order, or MCO, and there were a lot of this interactions that we have using the audio format of Clubhouse. Clubhouse very intense at that time, and there was we don't have any physical interaction, so a lot of this social media platforms such as Clubhouse and became the norm in terms of our intellectual debates and our arguments and our opinions regarding architecture education. And it was a heat of the moment as well, because people were suffering with the lack of physical interaction, and we had to accommodate to that. But anyway, we came out with a lot of we agree and we disagree. There were also some disagreement to how to approach the design thesis in or the 5th year in architecture design course. So watch out for this coming episode where I have this conversation with Mr. Lok Wooi, and I think this particular episode that you'll be hearing soon in a few days' time sort of give a summary or agree to disagree sort of scenario between me and him, and sort of put a conclusion to all those discussions we had in the Clubhouse. The role of the Malaysian Board of Architects as well was touched upon, and the interpretation of the curriculum in how we interpret the curriculum or interpret the aims of the Malaysian Architecture Board, or a Malaysian Architecture Education Board. So these interpretations at the level of the department or the School of Architecture is where is at. I mean, there's not a rigid, strict control about how to go about it. There's just guidance given, but it will be discussed during those visits to validate the courses that they have every 5 years or so. But of course, the real stuff that is going on is how the studio lecturer interpret all that and also get their own goals and visions along with the departments or the school's vision to how students can flourish or in learning about architecture and gain the confidence to graduate and be out there in the industry. It is a continuum, and for myself, I'm very interested in this, what happens, this continuum, and whether there was enough learning, whether that's not that is not the problem, whether or not schools of architecture should be much more in the liberal arts education, whether School of Architecture should equip students of architecture in a very strong technical way for them to be prepared and be confident to get into the industry. And my sentiments, I have given those opinions in many previous podcast episodes. So yes, this is what season 12 is about. We get to talk with people you don't normally know of or hear of earlier. We have the usual suspects. Like I've always interviewed particular people like Kevin Matlow and Huat Lim and Amna and other people who are closer in my circle than closer to my circle or closer to my interactions or the projects that I collaborated with. But now I'm going to go away from that to interview the same things that, based on the same topics that had arisen before, but interview others and those who may not necessarily agree with me. And I think there are more of agreement than disagreement between me and Lok Wooi. So I hope that you will enjoy this episode coming up. And also look out for the episodes after that. We shall be dealing with architecture education and architectural practice more in this month. Last month in January and this month in February, and later we shall be dealing with the topic of women in architecture as well. So, yeah, this is getting to be much more expanding away from architecture education and practice, but architectural practice, because there's a lot to do with education. Whenever we see discussion on Facebook, for example, the group that I'm in, the Women Architects Collective, inevitably we will discuss about education as well. So whatever that one picks or think about in architecture practice, the issue of education not necessarily in the 5 years course, but education in general, or the idea of learning in architecture, is quite consistent in our thoughts and our expressions. So thank you very much for listening to this episode. Watch out for the interview and the conversation I'm having with Lok Wooi of Wooi Architects coming up very soon. Thank you.